going, YouTube? I think in a video a little while ago I mentioned that I like to maintain my shop equipment once a year. I think it was in a video, it might have been in a reply to somebody. Basically, I go through my shop equipment, like my the rollers, the wheels on the jack, the wheels on my engine crane, and my little stool that I have. And I lubricate the wheels, check them all over. And I do that every year. And I change the oil in my compressor every year. You know, an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure, like they say. But it's funny, I never thought of maintaining one of the oldest things I have, which is this this Black & Decker Workmate table that I have. You know, it just served me so well for so many years. And you know, working away, it came apart on me. But nothing serious, it's just a screw that backed off. But those of you that have equipment, Tommy Shoe maintains his equipment. You know, and there's, like you say too though, there's, I think that hole might be screwed up, maybe cross-threaded or something. She's cross-threaded. Time out. Okay, had to go get a tap and hadn't put the tap handle back last time because I was using it the other night. It's time for a new one. This one's not working quite as well. It's a Max, so it's got a lifetime warranty on it. But it's had its share of use. Anyway, it's kind of interesting to see different people's perspectives on shop equipment. Well, you get someone like Tommy Shoe that is very meticulous with his tools. His tools last a long time and serve him well. And then I think it was VW Darren that said he never oiled his air tools. And you know, there's two extremes, I think, there. And then everyone else is likely somewhere in the middle. I'm kind of on Darren's side with some stuff and on Tommy's side with the other. I maintain all my stuff, but there are some air tools that I don't oil. The ones that I use doing body work, because I don't want the oil spraying all over what I'm working on. But some of the other stuff I do oil. So, you know, the guys were kind of starting to get on that safety kick a little bit and talking about PPE, personal protective equipment. And having been a safety officer for several years for the local phone company, that's something that's kind of near and dear to me. And Slow SRT there, his wife Angel there had it right. You know, the charcoal in those masks does have a shelf life once it's open, once it's exposed to air, and you can prolong it a little bit by putting it into a Ziploc bag. But one of the things that I can notice you guys not doing is replacing gloves that you've used for painting. Some of you do, some of you don't. HPR has a pair he said he uses to clean his gun all the time. Well, you have to be careful with that too. And the reason you do is there's a thing called permeation rate. And what that basically is how long does it take a chemical to work its way through the glove. It can be hours, days. You know, you guys have all used different gloves that they kind of break apart after a short time. That's because the chemical permeating them. A number of years ago, my mom had a set of gloves that she used when she was stripping furniture. And she used the same gloves time in and time out. And when she was done, she put them away with everything. I figured I might as well tighten all these others while I'm here. And she was doing some chairs. She started getting sick. She was stripping them. And thought she had the flu. So she obviously stopped working on the chairs for a while and felt better. And she went, and when she felt better, she went back to stripping the chairs. Well, within hours, she was feeling sick again. So she stopped again, thought maybe the flu was coming back. And third time around, she got sick literally within 5 minutes. And what was happening was the chemical was permeating her gloves. And when I was taking my some of the training I took in occupational health, think of the glove not so much as how thick it is this way, but if you expand it out to a thicker level, let's say, time out again. Okay, now a lot of the product that's out there that you're going to use with bodywork is going to have a permeation rate listed on it somewhere, or the gloves will for various chemicals. And what happens is, let's say this is the thickness of the glove, whether it be neoprene, leather gloves even have permeation rates. And what happens is, when you're working on something, the stuff is getting in on the surface. You know, you've got the chemical, and you've all seen when you're staining wood how that stain gets in a little bit. So it's gotten in. Now, the glove will have given you protection when you used it, but some of that stuff will have gotten inside, like that. Now that stays there, and maybe it was really hard for that chemical to get in that first little bit. But now, this chemical in there may become almost like dormant, and maybe it only went in there about 1/4 of an inch. The next time you use that glove, it's going to go through that first 1/4 of an inch like it's not even there. It's just going to be bang, and it's going to reactivate that chemical, and it's going to go another 1/4 of an inch. But now, when you take it off, because there's more chemical there, it might go another 1/8 of an inch while the gloves are stored. Then you use the gloves 2 days in a row. And it goes through that first bit fast again, and it's going to go through farther. Now you've gone over halfway through the glove, and you've used them, whatever the permeation rate is, 8 hours, 16 hours, 30 days, whatever. Like I say, they all have a different rate. But eventually what happens is, this stuff does, and the gloves, because of the molecular structure, does, it doesn't go in on a straight line. It finds paths, different paths, and once in a while, it'll find a path that'll just get through the glove to the inside. Now you have a channel in there that's going to take that chemical to you almost instantly or within minutes, and that's what was happening with my mom. And she was, by the time we found out, her hands were numbing, and because of that, the reaction she had, she can't, she doesn't strip furniture, it hasn't for years anyway, but it was all because of using the same, and it was a good heavy-duty pair of gloves for chemicals, but the chemical worked its way through and then sat, worked its way through farther and sat, worked its way through farther, and then 3rd or 4th time she used the gloves for stripping, there's a path. So she'd put it on, she'd get the chemical stripper on the outside, and it was just like a funnel. It would just go right through and right into her hands. So for those of you trying to save $1 or $2 on gloves, like the ones like the nitrile or the latex gloves, if you're using those for painting, I think it's VW Darren, I think, throws them away every time. But you have to watch that. If you're using gloves for chemicals and you're exposing yourself to chemicals, you have to watch for that permeation rate. And you have to know that those gloves will become contaminated all the way through. So you have to make sure that you don't wear gloves for too long. They don't last forever just because they don't have holes in them. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that little helpful tip out. Also, one of the concerns I have with the respirators is you really have to be careful when you're taking I'm going to do a 3rd time out here. This is kind of rare. Okay, I'm back again. This time I'm going to try and finish off. Okay, you guys were talking about your respirators. This is, I have 3 different ones that I use. My eyes aren't focusing good today, so I can't tell you what make it is. But one of the problems, or one of the concerns I had when you store your respirator in a bag, okay, the cartridges do have that shelf life once exposed to the air. when you got the respirator on, the whole outside of the respirator is covered with the chemical you're trying to avoid. When you throw this whole thing in the bag, you now have the chemical you're trying to avoid airborne within the bag, getting to the inside of the mask, because it's nothing stopping it. That's a concern I have. So whenever I store my respirator, I always wipe down the outside of it. But when I'm going to store the filters, I take them off. I put a piece of masking tape over the side that goes to, that has the clean side. And then I put just the cartridges into the bag. That way, whatever chemical is on the outside here is not getting to the inside, and it's not getting to the inside of my respirator. In the case like this respirator, these cartridges are done, and I don't have new ones handy, so I've left them on. It's not stored in a plastic bag right now either, but it's I left them on so I knew which ones I was using. And okay, this one is MSHA and NIOSH approved, and approval number issued to the United States Safety Service. And it says right on it, permissible chemical cartridge for organic vapors. Do not wear in atmospheres immediately dangerous to life or containing more than 1/10% organic vapor by volume. Refer to the manufacturer's instructions. That's basically telling you that if you're in a high enough concentration, you should be using a supplied air and not one of these. That setup that Darren has, I like that. When I finally get around to having to paint my Roadster, I'm hoping I get around to painting it eventually. Although progress does sometimes seem to be painfully slow. I think I'm going to buy one of those, or see if I can rent one. I've never had problems with my respirators, and normally, you know, this is the first year in probably 30 years that I haven't grown a beard in the winter. And these don't seal if you have a beard. If you have long sideburns or anywhere, HPR was showing when Katie was painting her sign there, he was showing how you do the fit check by putting your hands on. Another thing you can do also is put your finger over the valve where the air comes out when you exhale, and you can blow. Sometimes you might not suck air in, but it may not be sitting quite right, and when you blow, it might just blow out easily. So that's another check you can do. It's good to have people like Angel out there that obviously has worked with, I guess, selling stuff like this, and you know, she knows her stuff. Listen, you know, safety is something that, it's not something we have to do. Safety should be an attitude that you have. I have 3 boys. I have 4 grandchildren. You know what? I want to be around for a long time to enjoy them. And cheating on safety equipment isn't the way to save some time, save some money. If I can't afford to use a proper respirator, I'm not going to paint. I'll pay somebody to do it, but then if you're paying somebody, you likely could have afforded to buy it. So I always have kept, in the past, spare cartridges, but this time I didn't. And this was actually only used once with these cartridges, but it was my last set. and I used it over the course of a couple of days. So the last coat I used, I was actually spraying stain on a board for my trailer for the floor. So I used it for that. But safety equipment's cheap. Lives aren't, lungs aren't. A lot of that stuff you can't get back, and a lot of stuff doesn't heal. So that was my little bit of a rant for our safety kick that was going on. I was a little slow getting on the boat here. But having been in safety, I was exposed to a lot of things through the reps, and a lot of training and stuff. I took university courses for 5 years to be certified in health and safety, and until I had to stop working with my MS, that's what I was doing, and it was my passion. But with my shit for brains that I get, I was starting to miss things, and not so much miss things where it would put people in danger, but miss things where I was missing getting stuff done. And if I was doing that, you know, how much longer would it be before I started missing the boat and maybe, you know, not telling people properly what to do or how to do it. So I miss working, but what can you do? I'd go back tomorrow if I was healthy, especially with, you know, the job I had, and it would be different now because my boss retired last year, and one of my early videos I mentioned how good he was. Just like one of the best bosses I've ever had. And when I first started in safety, he was doing safety half-time and a different job with workers that were off sick or hurt. And then he kind of took over the department and was doing just that, and I took over all the safety. And the people I worked with were good, and it's actually one thing that kind of eats at me is I liked to think that I might have had his job when he retired, because, you know, he retired, he's 56 or so. He's under contract right now because the person that replaced him was on maternity leave, and she's coming back to work at the end of February. So he's retired, but then they called him back on a contract basis because they needed him to do the job. And I like to think that might have been my job to get when he retired, and one of my co-workers did the environmental stuff, so he did more with the exposures and you know, permits for the company to use pesticides and herbicides and stuff along right-of-ways for where the poles and stuff are. He's retiring now too, and the person that kind of replaced me, she was actually a student for a couple of summers. And then when I started having to cut back on my hours, she took up some of the lighter tasks that I had. She kind of took over from what I was doing when I finally had to stop working, and now she's got my boss's job. So I think, you know, I likely could have taken that job on. So, you know, it's not her fault. You know, it's all the power to her. I'm proud of her for that. I call her a kid because my oldest son is older than her, and I know. And she was a lot of fun to work with as well. But you know, you always wonder what could have been, and that was one of the things that I wish, you know, what could have been if I had stayed working? Would I have gotten that job and been the head of the whole department then? Would have been nice to, you know, it's nice to think that. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. Or would have happened, but, you know, I guess we'll never know. And if I sit and keep thinking, you know, what if What if, you can't play games of what if, as my dad used to say, you can't play what if. What if this happened? What if a satellite falls in my yard? Am I going to get radiation poisoning or become real rich because I found a satellite? You can't play what if because it doesn't have any meaning. So anyway, here I'm ranting on something else, loosely related to safety. And but I'm 51. Had to stop working when I was 45 because of my MS, and I miss it. And it took me till I was in my 30s to realize that as much as I enjoyed working as a mechanic, it's not what I wanted to do for a living. It's just when the economy was bad in the late 70s, early 80s, it was something I was able to do. So I did that for several years for the phone company. And then now I've since moved on into the management position in the safety department and doing a lot of stuff, accident investigations and dealing with a couple of fatalities that were on our property. Health and safety regulations, provincial, federal stuff. Had to deal with OSHA in the States because we had a number of crews actually went down and worked in California for Bell for a couple of years under contract, so I had to follow up and meet the OSHA regulations as well. So most places when you're working as a safety officer or an official for safety, you work with one set of regulations, where I was working with three because some of our departments were considered federal. Most of them were, and we had a couple that were considered provincially regulated. And I also had to deal with the Highway Traffic Act and the Transportation of Dangerous Goods Act and stuff like that. So it was a challenging job. It was really fun, and I definitely miss it. Anyway, I've been babbling on for probably 10 minutes about this stuff now, so this time I am going to let you go. Catch you later.